When Victoria Sterling's billionaire husband, Mistress, called her a charity case at their own anniversary party, she smiled and walked away 3 months later, that same Mistress begging on her knees. What Victoria did next shocked everyone, including the husband who thought he owned her. This story will make you believe on karma, so hit the subscription, stay till end. Stay till the end because this story is not about shouting revenge or instant justice. It is about patience, silence, power, and a woman who let the world underestimate her until it was too late to stop her. My name is Victoria Sterling, and for more than a decade my existence was reduced to a last name borrowed from a powerful man. Ethan Sterling, the billionaire everyone admired. The man magazines called self-made, ruthless, brilliant, visionary. They never called him faithful, they never called him kind, and they never asked who stood beside him when his empire was nothing but a dream and a rented office with flickering lights. I did, but history has a way of erasing women like me, polishing men like him, and rewriting sacrifice as dependency. The Sterling Anniversary Gala was meant to celebrate 15 years of marriage, 15 years of loyalty, compromise, silence, and survival. It was held at the Grand Aurelius Hotel, a palace of glass, marble, and gold overlooking a city. Ethan practically owned the chandeliers, reflected 1,000 fractured versions of power politicians. Investors, celebrities, all gathered to bow, laugh, and pretend loyalty. Waiters floated like shadows. Music hummed softly and cameras flashed endlessly because the Sterling name meant access, meant safety, meant money. I arrived alone, as always, stepping out of the car in a midnight blue gown, tailored perfectly to a body the world believed was dressed by my husband's wealth. They did not know I designed it myself years ago. When I still believed beauty could protect me inside the ballroom, Ethan stood at the center, commanding attention, smiling, shaking hands, while beside him stood Luna, gray, young, ambitious, reckless, wrapped in a red dress that screamed hunger. Her laughter cut through the room, sharp, too loud, too confident. Her fingers brushed Ethan's sleeve with familiarity that made my chest tighten, not with jealousy, but with clarity. Because betrayal hurts once, after that it educates. Whispers followed me as I walked. Is she blind? Does she know? Why does she look so calm? Calmness terrifies people more than tears, because tears beg calmness. Judges, I had known about Luna long before that night. I knew when Ethan stopped looking at me, when meetings stretched into dawn, when his phone became an extension of his hand, when excuses replaced conversations. I knew, and I waited. Because storms are not fought by running into the rain, they are survived by building shelter. Luna finally turned her attention toward me, her eyes sharp, assessing, calculating. She looked me up and down like an object she had already won. Then she smiled, a smile soaked in poison, and leaned close enough that I could smell her perfume. Expensive, deliberate, she said. You must be Victoria. I nodded politely because manners cost nothing. She tilted her head, feigning curiosity, and said with a soft laugh, You are very lucky. Some women would not survive without charity. The word charity echoed louder than the orchestra behind us. A few people froze, others pretended ignorance. Ethan stiffened, but said nothing. And in that silence, I learned everything I needed to know. Luna leaned closer, her voice dropping just enough to wound. Who would you be without him? I looked at her and I smiled. Not a polite smile, not a forced one, but a calm, knowing smile. I placed my champagne glass on a passing tray, turned, and walked away. No confrontation, no tears, no raised voice, just my heels clicking softly against marble as the crowd parted, confused, disappointed, because women are expected to break publicly when humiliated privately. That walk became gossip headlines, speculation, but inside me something ancient woke up, because before I was Victoria Sterling the wife, I was Victoria Hale, the woman who graduated top of her class in finance at 22, the woman who built startups, sold companies, negotiated rooms full of men twice her age, and never blinked. I buried her when I married Ethan because love demanded compromise and patriarchy demanded erasure. 3 months passed after that gala. 3 months of silence from me and celebration from them, Ethan. Thought I had accepted my place. Luna thought she had replaced me. Tabloids started featuring her, subtly hinting at a future. Mrs. Sterling, while I stayed invisible, and invisibility is the greatest weapon. Underestimated people move freely, I returned. To old contacts, mentors, lawyers, accountants, people who remembered Victoria Hale, people who owed favors, people who feared my precision. I requested documents, files, contracts from years ago, papers I signed blindly, trusting a man I loved because love dulls instincts, but instincts never die. They only sleep. What I discovered rewrote my reality. Ethan Sterling did not own Sterling. Global alone, he never did. His father, a man far wiser than his son, had placed 49% of the company. Quietly under my name with layered clauses and triggers designed to protect the company from scandal, ethical breach, or reputational collapse. One clause activated under public misconduct, tied to executive behavior and conflict of interest. Luna Gray was not just a mistress, she was a liability. Reckless, ambitious, sloppy, she attended meetings, she posted photos. She used connections, she crossed lines, every move documented. Archived, time-stamped. While she enjoyed the illusion of power, I tightened my grip silently. The board meeting invitation was sent on a gray Monday morning, mandatory attendance, executive restructuring agenda. Luna wore white that day, confident, glowing, believing it was her ascension. Ethan barely looked at me as I entered, carrying only a slim folder, but when the screens lit up in emails, contracts, photos, transactions flooded the room. The color drained from his face. Gasps echoed. Luna froze. Security moved. Ethan shouted, demanding explanations. That was when I spoke. For the first time in years, and the room obeyed. Gentlemen, Sterling Global will undergo immediate leadership restructuring, effective immediately. Ethan stared at me like a stranger because he had never truly seen me. You cannot do this, he said, his voice cracking. I slid the documents across the table calmly. I already have security escorted. Luna out as she screamed, cried, collapsed, dragging herself toward me, grabbing my dress, begging, saying she did not know, that she was sorry, that she loved him. She fell to her knees, the same knees that stood proudly in red silk 3 months earlier. I looked down at her, not with anger, not with triumph, but with clarity, and I said nothing because karma does not need words, it needs time. And as Ethan realized the illusion of ownership he built his life on was shattering around him, I understood something powerful. This was not the end, it was the beginning. And if you think this was shocking, stay with me, because what comes next will expose not just a mistress or a marriage, but an entire empire built on underestimating one woman. Stay till the end, because the moment you think power has shifted, you will realize the real game had not even begun yet. After Luna was dragged out of that boardroom, screaming my name, begging, the woman she once mocked, Ethan, stood frozen, surrounded by men who only minutes ago called him king and now would not meet his eyes, because loyalty in rooms like these is rented by the hour. The meeting ended without applause, without speeches, without respect. And as people filed out, whispering, calculating, already planning how to survive the fall of a giant, Ethan finally turned to me, his voice shaking with rage, disbelief, and something dangerously close to fear, asking how long I had planned this, asking who helped me, asking how I could betray him. Like this, I listened calmly, because men like Ethan believe betrayal only exists when it happens to them. They forget the quiet, daily betrayals they commit without consequence. I told him the truth. I told him this was not a plan born in anger, but preparation born in survival. I reminded him who I was before him, how I built before. I loved how I chose him, not because I needed him, but because I wanted him, and how he mistook my loyalty for weakness and my silence for ignorance. He laughed bitterly, telling me I would regret this, telling me he would destroy me socially, financially, legally. He still believed power was something he alone possessed. What he did not understand was that power shifts quietly like tectonic plates until the earthquake is inevitable. That same evening, news broke. Sterling Global stock dipped, investors panicked, rumors exploded, and Luna Gray became a trending topic not as a future wife but as a liability scandals from her past resurfaced, unpaid debts fabricated. Credentials, leaked messages proving influence peddling and unethical interference. I did not leak them directly, I simply unlocked doors and let gravity do the rest. Ethan came home that night, drunk, furious, accusing me of humiliating him, destroying his legacy, threatening divorce lawsuits, smear campaigns. I let him speak because people reveal their truest selves when they are losing control, and every word he said documented his downfall. When he finally stopped shouting, he asked me what I wanted, and for the first time in 15 years, I answered honestly. I want my life back. The next weeks were war board votes. Legal maneuvers, hostile interviews, and silent phone calls from people who once ignored me, now addressing me with respect. Fear, curiosity. Ethan tried to paint me as a bitter wife manipulated by emotions, but facts do not bend to narratives. Audits confirmed misconduct. Contracts validated my authority, and the board removed him from executive control, temporarily pending investigation. That temporary became permanent faster than anyone expected. Luna attempted interviews, crying victim, blaming manipulation, but sponsors dropped, her friends vanished. And when she tried to contact Tyson, he blocked her because fallen men cut loose reminders of their shame. I watched it all from a distance because revenge is not loud, it is procedural. Ethan underestimated something fundamental. He thought marriage gave him ownership. He thought money bought silence. He thought love erased identity, but I was never his asset. I was his partner, and when partnership died, the balance sheet corrected itself. The divorce filing came unexpectedly from him, a last attempt to regain control and embarrass me publicly, but inside the legal paperwork he missed a clause. One, his father insisted on a clause that protected personal assets, contributed before marriage, and everything Ethan built in the first 5 years came from my capital, my ideas, my strategies, my risk. When that became public, Ethan did not just lose reputation, he lost ground, he lost leverage, he lost himself. The press turned from worship to interrogation headlines, questioned his rise, ethics, legacy, and future, while mine shifted from silent wife to mysterious power player. Interviews requested, appearances demanded, but I declined because mystique unsettles people more than explanation. Meanwhile, Luna disappeared from public view until one rainy afternoon months later when she appeared at a charity event, ironically, one I funded anonymously, thin, desperate, unrecognizable from the woman in red. She saw me across the room, froze, then walked toward me slowly like approaching judgment. She dropped to her knees again publicly, this time crying, apologizing, blaming love, manipulation, ignorance. Cameras flashed, people gasped. Ethan watched from a distance, powerless, unable to intervene, and in that moment, everyone waited to see what I would do. Would I crush her, forgive her, humiliate her? I leaned down, whispered something only she could hear, and stood up, walked away, leaving her kneeling, not because I wanted revenge, but because consequences do not require cruelty. And as the crowd erupted in speculation, Ethan finally understood something that broke him completely. He never owned me, he never controlled me, he never deserved me, and karma had not finished yet, not even close. After the charity event, the image of Luna on her knees spread everywhere, not because I staged humiliation, but because the world witnessed power reverse in real time, and reversals terrify people more than cruelty. Ethan stopped calling, stopped threatening, stopped pretending control, because public exposure breaks men like him faster than lawsuits. He disappeared behind lawyers, advisors, and excuses while I stepped forward into decision rooms, places where voices are low and consequences permanent. I began restructuring Sterling Global with precision, cutting corrupt ties, dissolving unethical contracts, restoring investor trust, and shifting company culture from fear to accountability. Every move highlighted the difference between inherited authority and earned leadership, and the board could no longer deny it. Profits stabilized, employee confidence returned, and suddenly the narrative changed from fallen billionaire to underestimated woman. Ethan tried to reframe himself as a victim of temptation, stress, and betrayal, but evidence does not forget audits, reports, and digital trails. Exposed years of manipulation and misuse of power. Allies abandoned him one by one because loyalty in business expires the moment risk arrives. Luna attempted to vanish, but debt and shame followed her endorsements. Collapsed friendships evaporated, and survival replaced ambition. She sent messages, long desperate, apologetic, asking for forgiveness and protection. I read them once, archived them, and closed the file because closure is optional, growth is not. Ethan finally requested a meeting. Neutral, quiet, stripped of ego, he looked older, smaller, his voice hollow when he asked why. I did not destroy him completely. Why I left him fragments of dignity. I told him destruction was easy, restraint required strength. He admitted mistaking my patience for weakness, my loyalty for dependence, and my love for surrender, and in that confession, his last illusion died. He asked about forgiveness, not reconciliation, just absolution. I told him forgiveness lives in the heart, but trust lives in structure, and structures once broken cannot be rebuilt with the same materials that failed. I walked away again, this time not wounded, not silent, but complete, reclaiming my name. Victoria Hale, launching foundations, mentoring women, investing in futures unseen, because legacy is not dominance. It is impact. Luna took work far from the city, stripped of glamour, reduced to routine. Survival. She crossed paths with me once in an airport terminal. Our eyes met. She nodded, I nodded back. No triumph, no hatred, only finality. Ethan sold his remaining shares, quietly attempted reinvention. Elsewhere, but names remember actions and consequences, travel. And while the world adjusted to the truth, one thing became clear: karma was never about revenge. It was about balance, and balance had finally returned. With Ethan removed and Luna erased from relevance, the world expected calm, but power vacuums do not stay empty. They invite tests and challenges. Began immediately, investors probing journalists, digging rivals, circling, waiting for me to stumble, because they could not accept that a woman who once walked silently beside a man now stood alone at the head of an empire. I let them watch. I let them doubt, because competence does not rush to convince skeptics. It outperforms them. Sterling Global entered its most transparent year in decades. Audits opened, policies rewritten, leadership diversified, and profits climbed steadily, not through exploitation, but through stability. Employees who once feared speaking now contributed innovation and loyalty. Replaced intimidation. Ethan watched from afar, giving anonymous interviews, trying to rewrite history, portraying himself as creator. Me as opportunist, but narratives collapse when numbers contradict them. His final attempt to destabilize the company came through a proxy lawsuit alleging manipulation, influence, abuse of marital access, a weak claim built on ego, not evidence. The court dismissed it swiftly, and in that dismissal, Ethan lost the last illusion of relevance. Luna tried one final time to reclaim attention by selling her story, but publishers declined because the world had moved on. Scandal expires when accountability arrives. She reached out again, not to beg, but to accuse, blaming me for her fall, as if consequence were persecution. I did not reply because arguments require equal standing, and she no longer had it. Instead, I focused on building what was denied to me years ago. Autonomy, purpose, peace. I legally restored my name, severed the Sterling identity from my future, and announced a new holding group under Hale Industries. The markets reacted with curiosity, respect, and caution, because rebirth unsettles people more than revenge. Ethan attended one final shareholders' meeting as an observer, sitting in the back, unseen, unheard, while I addressed the room, outlining vision, growth, responsibility, and ethical dominance. Not once did I look at him, because ghosts lose power when ignored. Afterward, he approached me, quietly asking if I was happy, a question he never asked. When we were married, I answered honestly yes, because happiness is not loud, it is stable. He nodded, understanding too late that control is not ownership and love is not possession. Luna vanished entirely. Rumors said she moved cities, countries, identities. But running does not rewrite memory, and Ethan eventually faded into a cautionary case study whispered in boardrooms as an example of how arrogance collapses faster than markets, and as the world adjusted to the new order, one truth settled quietly. This was never about a mistress or a marriage. It was about a woman remembering who she was and refusing to be erased again. Time passed, and with it the noise faded because real endings are quiet. Not explosive hail industries grew steadily, intentionally. Never chasing headlines, yet setting standards, partnerships formed on ethics, innovation, and mutual respect. And for the first time, my decisions were not questioned through the lens of a man beside me, but evaluated on merit alone. Universities invited me to speak not about revenge, but about resilience, about knowing when silence is strategy and when it is surrender. Employees told stories of how the company culture changed, how fear left rooms and creativity entered, and that mattered more too. Me than market caps ever did. Ethan sent one final letter, handwritten, apologetic, reflective, admitting he confused possession with partnership and admiration with entitlement. I read it slowly, folded it, and placed it away, not as a wound, but as a chapter closed, because closure does not require confrontation. It requires acceptance. Luna never resurfaced publicly, but one evening at a small cafe in another city, she appeared older, quieter. Working a simple job, our eyes met again briefly there. Was no apology, no accusation, only the weight of consequences settling into normal life. And in that moment, I understood karma is not dramatic. It is proportional. She once stood elevated by illusion and fell into reality, while I once lived reduced by perception and rose into truth. The world moved on as it always does, but stories linger, especially those that remind people that power borrowed eventually expires and power earned endures. I never remarried, not out of bitterness, but out of wholeness. Because love chosen freely is different from love survived, and on the anniversary of the gala that changed everything, I stood alone on a balcony overlooking the same city skyline, not in diamonds, not in silk, but in quiet confidence, knowing I was no longer a shadow, no longer a charity case, no longer owned. And if this story leaves you with one truth, let it be. This karma does not chase, it waits, and when it arrives, it does not ask permission. It simply balances the scales.